Welcome back. Doing a New Year's style video today, and it's nothing fancy, nothing super interesting as far as like theology or apologetics or anything like that. It's actually just I don't want to call it a New Year's resolution video, but it's similar to that. I want to talk about 10 books that I am determined to read this year. I typically set goals for reading that are way too high. Some years I hit them, other years I don't hit them. And really, this past year kind of humbled me just a little bit. I set a goal at the beginning of the year. I use Goodreads to track reading goals, and I try to do the yearly reading challenge and all that. And I set a huge goal of like 50 books at the beginning of the year. I've done 40, 45 in the past years, and was able to hit that. But with moving, now being a senior pastor of a church, having a third kid, and also being in a doctoral program, it did not happen this year. And I think I hit 24 this year. So I did not come close to my goal of 50 books. And so this year, I want to take a different approach. If you just heard that squeak, that was my leather chair scraping against my desk, just to clarify that in case somebody heard that and was wondering what that was. That's what that was. But I'm going with a lot more conservative goal this year for what I want to read, what I want to accomplish in reading. Now, this does not include fiction. I read a lot of fiction. I'm a big fantasy reader. Over the last year and a half, I've not read as much fantasy as I normally have. I think I kind of got to a point last year where I had read so much fantasy that I needed to do something else. And so I've been reading more science fiction, and I've really been enjoying that. I've been reading a few different series for or in the genre of sci-fi, Dune, things like that, and that's been really enjoyable. So maybe I'll make, if there's any interest, I might make a video of what I plan to read fiction-wise, and why I think it's interesting as a Christian to read certain books. Man, this chair, I gotta scoot it back. I get a lot out of reading fiction on a pastoral level because it lets me illustrate. I like working in images a lot, and I'll pull illustrations from books, and so I like reading books for that reason. I like reading it just for pure pleasure and enjoyment, but also I find it interesting to engage with different authors and their worldview and perspective. So I like reading fiction. That's not what this video is about, though. Maybe I'll make a video on my fiction reading plans. But this year, I have 10 books that I want to read through that are like Christian in genre. 10 books that I want to get through. I will probably not. I don't want to say that. I want to go on with the positive outlook. I'm going to really try to read all these books. There's a chance I won't finish them all, and that's okay. Now, I will read Christian books outside of these 10 books. I keep looking over at the stack, and it's intimidating me. There will be Christian books that I read outside of these 10 books because there's things that I have to read for school. I'm not counting those towards the stack. There's things that I read for ministry commentaries, books for like book studies, things that I'm doing with the elders at my church, things that I'm doing for like discipleship purposes that I'm reading. That's separate in my mind from this stack. These are 10 books that I personally want to read and benefit from this year. So without further ado, here's the 10 books that I want to read going into this year. And I think some of these, as I finish them, I will want to talk about them on the channel. But 10 books that I want to read, starting with this book. I picked it up and I read, I think, half of the first chapter in 2025, but I put it away just because it wasn't, the timing wasn't right. But I think now the time is right. This is What Great Ministry Leaders Get Right by Jimmy Dodd and I don't know how to say the second author's first, middle, or last name, but there it is if you can see it. I'm not going to try. My Midwest will show really bad. But it's just a book on ministry leadership, competencies you need to succeed in ministry. And I feel like, looking at myself as a pastor, that my area of struggle is in leadership. I don't think I do a horrible job, but I do think that's an area that I need to improve in. And so I think it's important to be aware of your weaknesses. And so I want to read this book just to improve in that way. And so that's one that I'll probably read pretty quick off the bat this year. I got it at a conference, and it's been staring at me on my bookshelf for quite a while. And so this year's the year. Next up, I don't know if my whole audience knows this, my very small audience knows this, but I'm a big film fan. Love the movies, love the theater, love cinema. When I say theater, I mean going to see movies in the theater. And it's I don't know what it is about living in New York, but that has like ramped it up even more. Been just wanting to watch New Yorkie movies. And so my wife and I have been watching a lot of different movies. We've been working through the American Film Institute's top 100 American films over the last year and a half. We've been having a ton of fun doing that. Our progress has been really, really, really slow because we like watching movies and we keep on getting distracted watching other movies that aren't on the list. But we're making progress. Over our Christmas break, we knocked out a couple. And so anyways, love cinema, love film. And I was assigned to read this book in college for a Christianity in the Arts book, our arts class. And I'll confess some sin here. I skipped reading this one. I read everything else in the class, but this is a thick book. And I was less disciplined, less mature in college. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to skip this and phone it in. And so I never read it. But now that I'm just really eating up movies right now, I just feel like this would be helpful, and I think it's a good time for me to read it, and I think I would enjoy reading it. And that's kind of what this reading list that I have is based on, of like things that I'm very interested in reading and that I want to read. Because if I pick things that I don't want to read, I find that I just don't end up reading unless I have to read it. And so I'm trying to pick things here that I have interest and passion for. There's a few things that actually might make it onto the stack. I might add a couple more things to this later in the year. I want to read John Patton's autobiography or biography. I forget if it's auto or not. That might make it on the stack. But anyways, so I want to read this book. It's on theology and film and dialogue. And I just think that would be super interesting. I'm not one who likes to just do things for no reason. Like, I don't want to just watch movies to be entertained and to zone out at the end of the day. I want to engage with it on a theological level, on a worldview level, spiritual level, just as far as thinking through the themes and the messages in a movie, and how it ultimately is a form of general revelation and truth or not truth that points back to God and his creativity. So this is a big one that I want to work through this year. I don't know if it's good or not. As I said, I never read a single page of it for that class, but I'm excited to try and read it. This book, my wife has tried to get me to read this book forever. I try to read at least one book a year. That's for my own spiritual benefit. I think that's important as a pastor, to read books that help you grow. And so that's what this is for. This is a gospel primer by Milton Vincent. And basically they're just little reflections and applications of the gospel. And it's just a way of like taking the gospel like a diamond, holding it up to the light and turning it in every which way and seeing every bit of sparkle in it. It's practical. It's about preaching the gospel to yourself every day. And so I want to read this for my own spiritual growth. Excited for that. She'll be happy. I haven't told her that I'm going to read that yet, but she'll be happy about that. She loves that book. This one, Church as a Culture of Care by Dale Johnson. This is kind of a hybrid between a book on biblical counseling and a book on church ministry and just how what kind of culture you have in your church. And so I'm excited to read this because it kind of ticks two boxes for me. One, in that it talks about counseling, and I think it's important to stay sharp on my ability to counsel people because that is something you do in ministry. But also, the fact that it's tying in the ministry of the local church as a whole, which I think is something that lacks sometimes in pastoral counseling books. You have books on like how to deal with this problem, but not a lot of books of like, you need to, this needs to be part of the life of the church and how you admonish and uh, instruct those in your care. So excited to read that one. It's short. I've tried to put a few short books in here. Uh, it's so frustrating because so many of the Christian books that I want to read are really long, and that makes me feel like I'll just never get to them. But I'm going to try this year. Next one, I had this one recommended by a friend. Van Gogh Has a Broken Heart, and it's by Russ Ramsey, and its subtitle is What Art Teaches Us About the Wonder and Struggle of Being Alive. And so it's just kind of a Christian engagement with the arts and Van Gogh, and yeah, I'm very curious about this one. Excited to read it. We do like a, well, there's one on the channel, but at our church we do like a, there's a sticker on the back of this book. It's driving me nuts. I'll mess with that later. We do like a get together every few months to talk about Christianity and the arts and creativity. And this is one that might end up being part of that at some point. We'll see. I want to read it for me first and just engage with it and see what I get out of it. I'm excited for it. Another one. This is another thick one. I don't know. I hope I can make it through all these this year. The Fellowship, The Literary Lives of the Inklings, and it's just about the Inklings at Cambridge and their whole relationship and inspirations and story. I love Tolkien. I love C.S. Lewis, and I'm excited to get into this and read this. I peeked and read the prologue. Did I say Cambridge? I mean Oxford. We're not at Cambridge. They're at Oxford. But I snuck and read the prologue to it, and it was very enjoyable. And I am pumped to read this and to work through this. I read a lot of Tolkien's fiction in high school and college, even some of the stuff that his son Christopher Tolkien finished. And so I love Tolkien, love C.S. Lewis. I'm almost done reading through the Chronicles of Narnia. I've been working on that for like a year on the fiction side of things, and then I want to get to his space trilogy soon as well. So yeah, I'm excited to read that. It's a chunk. Oh my word, it's so long. It is 640 pages long. So that'll be a lot. Here's another one that I want to read. This is The Search for Christian America by Mark Knoll and George Marsden and Nathan Hatch. Now, interesting backstory on why I want to read this. So, I've mentioned this before. I abandoned a thesis for a THM degree. I switched my doctoral degree over to a doctorate in preaching. But before I switched, my goal and plan was to write on Francis Schaeffer and how L'Abri provides a good model for ministering to those who either are curious about Christianity or doubting their faith. And so, like, here's a model for how to respond to deconstruction and to do apologetics was basically the idea of the thesis, was figuring out how to emulate that in the local church. I still would like to do that at some point, maybe not as a thesis, but just as a research project. And I don't know if I'll ever write a book, but if I was to write a book, I want to write it on that. But in my research that I did do for that thesis, I came across this book because this was sort of written as a response to erroneous ideas that Francis Schaeffer had about the origins of the United States. And so he, kind of towards the end of his life, got very caught up in I don't want to say Christian nationalism, because I think that has different connotations now, but like an incredibly patriotic Christianity. I don't know how to word it. Maybe it's like an old school Christian nationalism. I don't know. But very caught up with like Jerry Falwell, that gang, and having like America's celebrations, and he just he had a wrong idea about the history of the United States of America. And was basically arguing that it was a totally Christian nation founded completely on Christian principles by Christians. And there's elements of that that's true, but there's also a lot of elements of that that's not true. And so these historians wrote a response book to his claims to show like that's just not like the specific things that he was saying was not historically true. And I find that interesting. So I've been wanting to read their response to kind of what he thought and his portrayal of American history was. But also, in some of the church cultures that I've been around, I've seen that kind of Schaefferian, Francis Schaeffer's way of thinking about American history. And maybe if you've been in the Bible Belt, you've heard kind of similar things of like, this is a Christian nation built on Christian principles by Christians, and the Constitution is a Christian document and all that. But whenever you actually kind of peek under the hood, there's more influences from the Enlightenment and more influences from like a lot of the founding fathers were really closer to like theists than they were Christians. And so I want to get into this book to kind of just see how much of that is. I want to explore that a little bit more, like how for every sermon that I've heard on America being a Christian nation, how true actually is that, and how can we have a dialogue about that, because that's something that's, at least in kind of the area that I grew up in, was very popular to say. And so I want to just explore. I've got interest there on the political level, on the pastoral ministry level, and on the as somebody who really loves and appreciates Francis Schaeffer, I'm just interested in how they've responded to that whole debate. So that's up here, up there for books I want to read this year. Here's another one. This is where it gets chunky again. These next three are big. So this is The Log College by Archibald Alexander, and basically it's a biographical sketch of William Tennant and his students who met at the Log College, along with different revivals that happened during their ministry. And so basically this guy trained pastors in like a log cabin, and there were revivals and just fruitful, faithful gospel ministry that happened in relation to William Tennant, his students, his teachings, and this just takes a look at that. And so I want to read this. It's Banner of Truth. I picked it up in a book haul last year. Look at, man, who does Banner of Truth's art and binding and design for their books? Because this is, look at that. That is just so beautifully retro and cool and moody. I love it. But I want to read that this year. I love doing pastoral training. It's something that I've enjoyed doing in the short time that I've done ministry. And so I also just kind of want to dig from the example of William Tennant a little bit, how to do that well. And then also I just love studying revival, as you probably saw in the last video I made. There's obviously connections to what I talked about in the last video here, so I'm curious about that. Next, here's a big one. Now, you've probably seen in my background, how do I need to move? Whoop, there we go. Directions are hard. Right? Oh, Corbin, wow. Man, don't mind me. Right here. There we go. I've got the full collected works of John Owen from Banner of Truth. So I've got his 16 volumes of all of his different books and some sermons. That's the green set. And then there's the orange set, which are his commentaries on Hebrews. It's a 7 volume commentary set just on the book of Hebrews, which is crazy. I want to preach to the book of Hebrews at some point and read every word from that commentary set. It's just got to be so rich. John Owen is wonderful. But my goal in life is to read through what's 16 plus 7? Oh gosh, 23? All 23 volumes the Banner of Truth is published of his works. So that whole set, and then his whole commentary set. I want to read through all that before I die. That's one of my bucket list goals. I'm not going to do it in order, though. I think the best way to do it, instead of just reading straight through book 1, beginning of the cover of book 1 to the end of the cover of book 16, is to just read what is pertinent and interesting and helpful to me. I think that'll drive me better to work through it. And so this might drive some people nuts. I'm going to start with volume 16 and this one is a collection of his different writings on the church and the Bible, and he talks about church issues, baptism, what it looks like to be a gospel-centered church, all sorts of stuff in this book. That's something I'm very interested in reading about right now, just church issues, ecclesiology, all that, and so this is the one that I think is drawing and is drawing me the most. So I'm going to start here, and it's like 500. When you exclude the bibliography, it's like 520 something pages. If I read 3 pages a day this year, I'm already behind a day. If I read 3 pages a day this year, I would be done in like 200 days, give or take. So I'm going to try and just inch through this. So that's kind of the big goal for the year is Owen. Then last, I've been working on this for a year. I've been going really slow through it. As you can see, really slow. I'm not that far through. Charles Spurgeon Autobiography, Volume 1, The Early Years. Man, this is a good book. Spurgeon's a good writer, and if you've read his sermons, you know that. But this is just dripping with beautiful prose, and it's very contemplative, very heartfelt, very honest. I just finished reading about his conversion and baptism. Oh my word. Just the way he describes his conversion is excellent, is beautiful. The way that he talks about like the gospel and the law is so helpful. I've pulled illustrations from here. There's a part earlier on where he talks about the law and what it means to be a lawbreaker, and he uses the picture of a chain and basically describes what James talks about, where if you've broken one area of the law, you've broken the whole law. And Spurgeon says, like, if you break a link in a chain, you broke the chain. And that's what it's like to be a lawbreaker. Like, you've only ever slandered somebody, but that's enough to break the chain, even though it's just a small link. And I just think that imagery, that word picture is so helpful and so clear, and helps you understand the law better. So I want to finish this year. I want to go a little bit faster than I've been going, but this is I'm enjoying it. I almost don't want to be over. Luckily, there's 2 volumes, so next year, 2027, I'll do volume 2, Lord willing. We'll see. All this is Lord willing, and so those are the 10 books that I want to read this year. I hope I make it through. Keep me accountable to it. What are 10 books that you want to read this year? Drop those down below in the comments. Have you read any of these that are on my list? Are there any of these that I should skip or that I should be excited about? Let me know. I'd love to hear what you're reading or what your reading goals are. If you're interested in me doing a video on the fiction that I want to read, I'll do that. I'll make that video. I don't know what my goal is. Let me pull it out of my satchel real quick. I'm working on this. This is the current fiction book that I'm reading through. Howling Dark by Christopher Ruocchio. Really good. My friends have been trying to get me to read the Sun Eater series for way too long, and I've read, this is the second book in the series. The first book I thought was really boring, and I struggled through it. It took me way too long to read that book. It was fine, but everyone's promised me that this book and the next book are like the 2 best books in the series, and that I will be hooked. I read like 2 chapters this morning, and I'm hooked. Yeah, they're really good, really interesting. So I'm working through that. That's one thing that I'm reading fiction-wise. But anyways, I'm babbling on at this point. This is way too long of a video for 10 books I want to read for 2026. But thanks for watching. Anyways, if you got any thoughts, drop them in the comments. I'll catch you next time.